Right, so Celtic's second game of pre-season, Charlton Athletic were the opposition, and we recorded another victory. 2-1 it finished in Wales. First half, very good. Second
hmm
half, maybe downgraded to a kind of good. John?
Yeah, the second half was a little bit messy. I don't think there's any getting around it. I'm not reading too much into the second half. When you almost fully change your team, that's to be expected in a game. It was almost like, and I know it's a terrible cliche, but it was almost like two different games, wasn't it? It was like one 45-minute game and a second 45-minute game. We won one 2-0 and we lost the other 1-0. So that kind of tells the story. I was certainly heartened by the first half though. Did you like what you saw from some of the youngsters and some of the passing in the first half?
I thought it was really encouraging. It was the first time I'd seen Postecoglou's imprint on this Celtic team. I watched the full game on Wednesday, whenever it was, and didn't quite see it then. I saw certain things that were good, but I think today we saw the ideas are already bedding in with this team. The thing I kept having in my mind, and it's probably because of that mic'd up video that we saw, keep the ball moving. I kept
Yeah,
thinking every time we had the ball, are they keeping it moving? And most of them were always
yeah.
keeping the ball moving. The ball was very rarely static, and comparing it to last season, that was often the case.
I was actually doing a bit of counting in the first half and kind of keeping track of how many touches the players were taking, and it was rarely over two touches. On occasion, it was three. It was never four or five really, and that happened very rarely. And I think even when you look at the training videos through the week, you saw Paul Cottahey explaining the rondos and the kind of practice matches they've been going through within the squad group. They played a game yesterday, which was between the two 18-yard lines, and only the attackers were allowed in the box. And they had to finish in two touches. But even the passing around the defence in the midfield area, they were just taking two touches and moving the ball on, even if it meant a player coming short or coming closer to the ball. And what that does is it creates energy, it creates little triangles, it creates combinations, it also creates a lot of space. And even the players off the ball, I feel like, are working much harder at the moment. I thought Albin Ayeti was working a hell of a lot in that first half. I know he got his headed goal, and that'll take the headlines somewhat. But outside of that header, I thought he was pretty impressive and kind of showed what he can offer as a pressing forward. So there's things to take away from there that's promising. Again, we always qualify these things that it's only a friendly, and I think that was Charlton's first game, so
Yeah.
it's not as if we're world beaters overnight. But at the same time, I agree with you. I think you kind of do see part of Ange Postecoglou's philosophy coming through. In some interesting ways too. I'm not sure what you made of Barkas in that first half, almost playing in midfield.
Bain was at it as well a little bit
Mm,
in the latter stages of the game, almost playing as a holding midfielder. Listen, if it's helping Postecoglou's way of playing and it's helping us to cycle the ball, then I'm all for it. But if we're going to concede chances and goals from it, then I'm less likely to be in favour. But it's certainly going to be a radical new Celtic. It's going to be an exciting Celtic based on that 90 minutes. I think you're right to caveat everything with this being a friendly for a couple of reasons. You've listed a few of them already. Charlton's first game, the fact it is only a friendly, points weren't up for grabs today. Also the fact that friendlies by their very nature are less kind of combative than competitive matches. I sometimes think it's easier to play nice little triangles in a friendly game when maybe players are a couple of yards off you than in a competitive match, at Tynecastle or Ibrox when you're going to get a slide tackle put in. So it's worth watching that, but definitely positive signs. First half, I think you're right, we were moving the ball 1-2 touch. Olivier Ncham came on and kind of skewed that slightly because he was still up to his old, taking 8, 9, 10 touches running down alleys and then giving it away. So that's something to bear in mind as well. I don't see him fitting into our way of playing. That's an early assertion I'm going to make.
Yeah, it was interesting though, but it was almost as if the team was trying to play a different way in the second half. And I'm not sure, we don't know at this stage whether that was an instruction from the manager or not, because I was even looking at players like Dembele and Johnston, right? I know they play on opposite flanks, but they're two wingers who like to dribble the ball, who like to keep the ball at their feet. In the first half, Karamoko Dembele was moving the ball on very efficiently, was passing a lot. Mikey Johnston in the second half was keeping a lot of the ball at his feet a lot of the time, and was taking the touches that you kind of would have expected last season. So it could well have been that those directions weren't in place for the second half. But yeah, there was interesting parallels there. But yeah, as I say, I mean, if we're going to play like that first half all season in terms of intensity and kind of trying to kind of if that's our intention and that first half is to play with that kind of intensity and short, sharp passing, then it will certainly be interesting and exciting, I would suggest.
Right, we probably saw 20 odd players play. So we're not going to touch on every single one of them, John.
Top 20 ranking.
That sounds like a long read for 67 Who'll Hail if ever I've heard one. Well, how about we pick out a few each? Who's number one? And it doesn't have to be someone that impressed you most. Who was the biggest talking point, you think?
The biggest talking point in the first half was probably Barkas in a way. We've just covered that. In terms of who was most impressive in that first half, I thought Callum McGregor was brilliant. I thought he just totally ran the show. I know we were passing the ball a lot more, but more often than not, everything went through him, and I think that bodes very well. If he's going to be our kind of central focal point in this midfield with a lot of passes moving through him, and he moves it on within one or two touches, then that's exciting. I thought he was great. And obviously the two goal scorers have to get credit. Dembele's goal was fantastic through a crowded area, and then him and Ralston kind of combined on the right flank for Ajeti to get his second of pre-season. So those were my three. I think Ajeti, Dembele and McGregor from the first half were the ones that stood out for me.
Dembele was one that I wanted to pay special attention to. I've been quite negative towards this guy, probably while the vast Celtic support are swept up by the talent he's got. I've never doubted the talent he has. I've never actually doubted his temperament either. I just wonder if he's big enough and quick enough and uses his body well enough to be a Celtic player. Again, the massive caveat is, players maybe weren't getting quite as tight to him as they would be. They weren't quite as aggressive as they would be in a competitive match. But I thought he looked really, really good. His close control is brilliant. It's something I've not actually seen from him yet. There was a couple of moments today when he did have players quite tight to him and he was, flip-flapping it and going left, right and taking it around players. He looked really, really good. He looked pacey and obviously had that end product. It wasn't an easy goal in the eye. It was a good finish, but it was a kind of scruffy goal, but he put it through bodies and into the back of the net. That's certainly a guy for me that could make an impression this season if he keeps that up, and he's given the opportunity to keep it up.
If we're talking about meaningful matches and this Midtjylland game coming up, if we're thinking about who's starting on the right wing, then Dembele's a contender. But James Forrest is obviously self-isolating at the moment, isn't involved in pre-season. Who else is there for that right flank? I wouldn't play Ryan Christie there. That can't happen, sorry. And so for me, Dembele's the standout choice there at the moment. Forgive
my ignorance, did Forrest have COVID or was he just a close contact?
I don't think it's clear. It was the reports were kind of strange. So he was self-isolating. I don't think he's been diagnosed with COVID. But then there was also a suggestion that he was carrying some sort of injury or illness as well on top of that self-isolation. So Ange is, I think, he wasn't ruling out that Forrest could be involved in the Champions League tie, but it certainly isn't a guarantee. And at this stage, what we're 10 days away, it's not looking likely, is it?
Well, we could always sign one. We could go into the transfer window and sign one. There's a novel idea.
Don't think we're ever going to sign a player, Hamish.
Yeah, I'm coming to terms with that as well. I'm trying to think. I should have made notes of who impressed me. I asked you the question and I didn't even make notes myself. I'm trying to remember who else impressed me in the first half anyway. Dembele really leapt out because I was surprised by how good he looked today. And again, it's only a pre-season game, but I was really surprised by how much of an adult he looked. But he should be. I think he's 18, 19 years old. He should be, an adult now. He is an adult and he should be able to play against men. Second half, I thought the two Sheffield Wednesday boys were really good. Liam Shaw, I think, early signs look really promising there. Likes to get stuck in. A big guy, gets around the pitch well. And all of that kind of goes for Urhoghide as well. Kind of similar in a way. Different players, but similar in their application. Urhoghide quite what's a kind of polite way to put this? I've got the bull in a china shop metaphor going around. I don't really want to
raw.
use that.
He's green.
But
he's green and raw. You know, I don't think he's polished at all. And I think that's maybe what you're getting at there. And I would say Shaw's probably a little bit further ahead in his development than I am. But I agree they both look confident and committed to this Celtic stuff. I think Liam Shaw, I mean, I wouldn't be against him getting competitive games quite early in the season. I think he looks quite far ahead and kind of...
Looks hungry.
He's hungry. He's assured of himself. He has a confidence. He's also well built. Like, he's got the physical stature for playing games in Scotland, for me, in the middle of the park. And, you know, if we're thinking about a midfield going forward and we're thinking about who we want to play, I would rather give someone like Liam Shaw game time than Olivier Cham or Ryan Christie.
Yeah, Urhoghide, he kind of goes steaming in a lot, and I remember Alex said that last week, because he's quite a big guy, bad tackles often look worse than they are, and that's something to you know bear in mind as we continue to watch his development at Celtic, is that he does quite often seem to steam into challenges when maybe you would want him just to kind of take a deep breath, but that's something I'm sure that can be coached. I was really impressed. He looks quick, he looks athletic, he looks really strong as well. I don't know exactly what height he is, but he looks like he's quite well built as well. So he looks a good player. The two French guys, we've kind of touched on in Cham, Edouard as well. You know, we're obviously not talking about Edouard's form at all, but he certainly looks to be buying into the Postecoglou way of playing. Where do you think Edouard's head is at the moment?
I'm not sure. I mean, we know that Chris Ayer has told media that he wanted away. Edouard hasn't taken that step ever, and in fact, during all that chat after Ferencváros last year, his agent was quite quickly in the media denying that Edouard wanted away. And I think, you know, Edouard does want to move. I think there's a lot of noises about that. At the same time, I've not got any concerns about Edouard's professionalism. I think that if he does want to leave Celtic, he'll give Celtic as good as he gets until he leaves the building, and I'm happy with that. You know, I'm not too concerned by that. I don't think he'll have his head turned and kind of throw a huff. I don't think that's Edouard's style at all, and I think sometimes sometimes people project that onto him, I think, and make that judgment of him unfairly. I think Edouard will try and give as good as he gets until the day he leaves Celtic, and you know, there's chat that might not be until next year. There's chat that Celtic might not sell him, or a club might not come in and buy him. And we'll
I'd love to know what he's thinking. I'd love to know what he's thinking at the moment. I would love to know whether what he thinks when he sees Postecoglou's training. Right, there's a couple of interesting things that have come up, so I just want to get your thoughts on. The first one from Melvin Starr, and we're taking Melvin's word for this. No reason to doubt Melvin. Ange, speaking after the game, looked furious with second half performance. If looks could kill, we've both obviously not seen it. We come on straight after full time. Interesting, maybe trying to send an early message out that he's only going to settle for 90 minutes of good football. Well,
I mean, as we say, it's an opportunity for some of these players. If he's not happy with the performances of some of those players in that second half, then I'm glad that he's speaking publicly about it. You know, that's what fans want to hear. You know, people will buy into Ange if he's honest and forthright with the support, and that's what he needs in these early moments. I did think there was a couple of concerning performances in that second half. And I'm not going to slaughter any players and you know, too badly, because it is a friendly, and it was some of these players' first game, and they're just coming back from international duty and such. But you know, some of these players do need to get the finger out and show that they want to take part in this kind of intense passing and pressing play that Ange Postecoglou is trying to, you know, imprint on Celtic. I thought the players in the first half did that. And I mean, I didn't see the Sheffield Wednesday game the other day. This was my first fresh look at a Postecoglou team. In the first half, I saw a clear identity about that team, about the way they were playing. It was cohesive. In the second half, it was fractured. And sometimes that only takes one or two players. But it kind of fell apart in the second half. So if he's not happy, I'm not surprised to hear that.
But we know from Postecoglou's previous clubs, the way he's acted, that if you don't buy into his way of playing, you will not be around for much longer. So that's worth bearing in mind as well. Tony Higgins, a question. Do you think Barkas deserves a second chance? I'm not convinced by him. If we could sign Matt Ryan, I'd take him over Barkas. It's an interesting one. That the Matt Ryan stuff, for all of the chatter, I don't think there's really been any hugely concrete interest. I think there's been a few reports of a possible deal, but I think a lot of it, and probably I'm responsible for a fair bit of it in my videos, but I think a fair bit of it is just, conjecture, people joining the dots and seeing that it could make sense because Ryan and Postecoglou have worked together in the past. It's an interesting one. If you were looking to get a new goalkeeper in, would you not want to do it right away? Is that not the one position you want sorted?
Well, I mean, this is it, really. I mean, essentially, because I'm new to this kind of Ange way of playing my goalkeepers and kind of pushing them forward. I was on Twitter earlier, and Khalil Kayal, who's listened to our podcast for years and speaks to us about Australian football and soccer. He's a big fan of Ange Postecoglou. He's maybe watching this or will watch this later. He was saying to me that every single game under Ange Postecoglou will have a keeper playing like this. So, what I want is a keeper that Ange trusts to do that. I don't really care who it is, as long as he has someone he trusts to do that. That's the main thing. Whether it's Barkas, I don't think it should be Scott Bain. I'm kind of off Scott Bain at the moment. But
made a great save.
But yeah, he didn't cover himself in glory for their actual goal. I also thought he looked less assured than Barkas with whatever Ange is wanting to do. Barkas looked confident today. I know the last 10 minutes of that half, he was a little bit over the place. I thought before that he looked confident. He looked at least like he wanted to do what Ange was telling him to do, which could be a big thing going forward. So whether it's Matt Ryan or Barkas, it needs to be a goalkeeper that Ange fully trusts, because he's asking them to do a lot. He's asking these keepers to do a lot now. It becomes a much more important role than just being a shot stopper.
I think for all the criticism of Barkas last season, I think probably the one part of his game you can't criticise is his ability on the ball. I think when we first signed him, that was one of the things that folks spoke about, is that he'll be able to pass the ball out from the back. And I thought in general today he looked fine with the ball at his feet. So I think that is one that another one I keep saying, another one we need to just keep an eye on. Plexi-Plox, I feel bad for McGregor having to keep that pace for 7,000 games this season. Will be challenging. Thanks for watching, getting in touch, and for the wee donation as well, Plexi-Plox.
McGregor was great though, wasn't he? I mean, he just looks right ready to go again.
The thing is, his last Scotland game was only 2.5 weeks ago. People have it in their head that he's going to take ages to get up to speed, but he's not really had an off season, to be honest.
Yeah, and he played in a completely different way today than he does with Scotland. It was much more all action. It was much more all over the pitch. It was much more trying to make sure that he was the person coming short for the pass after one or two touches. He looks fully bought in. Like immediately. I mean, sometimes you can just see it. And it remains to be seen whether this team's going to be successful or not, of course. But in terms of attitude and application, like, I thought McGregor looks fully bought into what Ange is wanting to do, and I think that bodes well. If McGregor wasn't looking interested, I think it would be pretty obvious, and he clearly is.
Just give him the captaincy, Celtic. Stop this messing around. I'm going to chat to senior figures at the club. Everybody knows it's Callum McGregor's the chosen one, captain material. Get it done.
Interesting, that one. I'm not sure if they're waiting to get back to Glasgow and make a big show of it, at Celtic Park, and do some sort of unveiling. They like to do these things. Yeah. Sometimes the club works in mysterious ways, but yeah, I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. He's the next captain. I don't think it's even much of the discussion at this point.
I think when the other contenders are Chris Julian and James Forrest, then it's going to be Callum McGregor. With all due respect to those guys. Shall we have a wee chat about Backroom team, etc., etc.?
Interesting.
An issue that was really hotly debated a few weeks ago. It was a major talking point with the previous manager we tried to get in, and the actual previous permanent manager. It kind of went away a little bit, I think, when Postecoglou first came in, and then it came back again. It was always kind of there, but it came back again. He's going to be keeping on John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan. That's what we know. He's spoken about wanting to bring in some other members of his Backroom team that he knows, so that's worth mentioning as well. But in terms of the kind of main people, it's going to be Postecoglou, Kennedy and Strachan. What do we think about that?
Yeah, I'm going to choose my words carefully, because I don't want it to come across as being too positive about this or defending it too much. I think in an ideal world, a lot of Celtic supporters would say this summer was a natural stopping point for John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan at Celtic after last year. I fully get the perception of them being linked to whatever happened last season under Lennon, and I get that John Kennedy, when he was into them boss, didn't really improve on things much, or didn't really offer some sort of any hope or vision of the future. In fact, I thought he looked a bit frozen in the situation, to be perfectly honest with you. But for me, this all comes down to whether we're going to put our trust in Ange Postecoglou as supporters. Do we trust him to make this decision? Do we trust that he is making this decision? Now, Celtic are adamant, and he is adamant, that he has the authority to make changes in his coaching staff if he wants to. And if you look back at things he said in his career before he joined Celtic, such as last March when he was on a podcast called Masterminds, he made it very clear that for the rest of his career and throughout his career in recent years, he doesn't really work with people he knows. In fact, he said on that podcast he sees it as a hindrance sometimes. And he said that kind of he likes to work with new people and kind of convince them to buy into his way of thinking, which helps the rest of the group buy into his way of thinking. If they're fresh and new to that and have an open mind to that, that's all he wants from his new staff. Obviously, they need to be good at their job and be able to be good at coaching. So for me, this isn't as much of an issue as some might make it out to be. I trust Ange to make the decision early doors, because if I don't trust Ange, then I'm opening a whole other can of worms about my thoughts about Celtic this season and what's going to happen. And so I think it's a kind of like it or lump it situation, really, to be honest. It's not ideal for me, but it's not me making the decision. He's better placed to make that decision than me, you, anyone else watching this, because really, none of us really know what Kennedy or Strachan do at Lennox Town. Ange Postecoglou does, and he's happy with them in place just now. That's my final say. I know it's a wee rant there, but that's my final say on the matter. It's a difficult issue to navigate, I think, but I don't think it needs to be perceived as a completely negative or completely, damning thing about this season ahead.
Yeah, it's almost like an elephant in the room with this whole new Celtic, new chief executive, new captain, new manager, loads of new players, and yet Kennedy and Strachan stay on. There's loads of arguments the way it's perceived by supporters is really negative, and perhaps that's important to an extent because it affects how much the Celtic support are going to buy into this Postecoglou era. Now, that's a comment some people may make. I don't necessarily agree with all of that, because I think we've seen enough from other parts of what Postecoglou's done, some of the new players that will hopefully come in, the new direction Dominic Mackay wants to take Celtic, for the support to be able to buy into this season. I don't think it's like a deal breaker, that the fact that Kennedy and Strachan are staying on. I would rather they didn't, just simply because I agree with you. I think the time had come, given how bad last season was, and we don't know who was responsible for how bad last season was. It might all have been Neil Lennon. I doubt that. I think it was a combination of factors. But as you say, it's a like it or lump it situation. Part of the problem for me is that we don't know what these guys do, and it would be great to get an insight from Celtic. We got that brilliant video of Postecoglou taking the training session. Thousands of retweets, thousands of likes, thousands of positive comments of Celtic fans loving it. Wouldn't it be great if we could get something similar with regards to Kennedy and Strachan? I'm not talking about miking both of them up, but I'm talking about finding out, what do they do in a day? What is the relationship between Postecoglou, Kennedy and Strachan? What's the relationship like between Strachan, Kennedy and the players? It would just allow supporters to know a bit more, because it just seems like we don't have a clue. But at the end of the day, in many ways, as long as the players are buying into it, then we won't have a problem. That's the bottom line. If the players buy into it and we get the results, Kennedy and Strachan will be heroes.
If Celtic beat this Danish mob in 10 days, no one's even going to bat an eyelid about it. So that's basically it,
But equally, if the result goes badly, it's going to be one of the first things that people bring up as a stick to beat Celtic with.
I think it's a bit silly, because as I said, I don't think Ange was ever going to come in with his own posse or his own crew. He doesn't have that. He doesn't do that in his career. He works with different people at different times, and then they go off and do different things in football because they've got their own ambitions. So that was never going to happen. He was never going to arrive with an Eddie Howe entourage or a Brendan Rodgers entourage. It just was never ever going to happen. And so the kind of narrative that Celtic have foisted this upon him, I don't think holds merit. And I think that if that criticism comes up later in the season, I think it will be just as illogical then as it is now.
But it'll be judged on results, just like every single thing at the club. It's the results that it'll be judged on. Stephen McKinney, thanks for the donation. Stephen, clearly not as happy. If Kennedy and Strachan are here, nothing will change. And I think that's probably a view that a lot of Celtic fans will hold. Stephen, thanks for getting in touch, and thanks for the donation as well. Another one I wanted to pick out, Mark Campbell there, just saying he's subscribed, Celtic fan for 45 years. I'm happy with having Postecoglou as our manager. Let's hope he gets the Celts moving in the right direction again. Mark, good to have you on board for season 21-22. Thanks everyone who's tuned in. There's been over 500 folk for most of this stream, which I don't know why folk want to spend their Saturday nights looking at two gormless idiots chat about football, but here we go.
It's a bit scary because you go and wee rants like that, and then you realise people have actually been watching you. That's the scary part, Hamish.
Yeah, but it's going well. Any other rants you want to go on before we close this off?
No, I mean, genuinely though, 10 days into this qualifier, when are these transfers come in? If you look at this squad since the time of November, December, when Celtic fans are really upset, what progress has been made with this squad of players? Absolutely none. If anything, we're walking backwards in that respect with the loan players that have left, players like Jeremy Frimpong who left in January. Celtic need to get their finger out. We need sign-ins. I mean, I'm not even saying for this game because it feels like even a bit late for that now. But we need to have proper preparation for this new season. I don't think it's good enough to go on much longer without any, genuine first-team quality sign-ins over the next while. I'm not talking about having 11 players in by this time next week, but surely it stands to reason we can to bring one or two in before the start of the Scottish Premiership season at least.
There we go, folks. Turns out he did have one more rant in him. Good stuff, John. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll speak to you soon. Take care, and hail, hail.